Mm-hmm. Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell weird tales within tales. And I drink coffee. I drink coffee from my skull mug because I'm a deadhead. Deadhead, in case you didn't know, is someone who likes the band The Grateful Dead, and usually all of its affiliates. These days, who's left of the band is running with Dead and Company. Well, they have been, and now I guess they're moving into a Forever Dead phase. They were the other ones, and before they were the Grateful Dead, they were the Warlocks, but another band had that name. They turned out to be the Velvet Underground. And both the Grateful Dead and the Velvet Underground started as the Warlocks, which is kind of funny. But neither one of them ended up with that, and the Grateful Dead found their new name, the Grateful Dead, in a Funkin' Wagnall's dictionary of all things, referring to some stories from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And these are, or at least this story, is about reincarnation. So every week here at Fireside Tales, we've been discussing reincarnation, and I've been telling the story of the Grateful Dead. Now, it's written in Sanskrit, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I'm not aware of any translation. So I heard this story from my friend who could read Sanskrit, who told me the story around a fire. He's a deadhead. We called him Grateful Fred. And he told me the story as he read it from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And this is what I tell you every week is what I remember from the Grateful Dead with my own embellishments. I change a couple minor details. Creative license. The original story I heard, the traveler was a boy, and I make her a girl. That's all I really change. We need more girl stories. I feel like there's been a lot of reincarnations of girls. So I found my firm belief in reincarnation from my own experiences within my soul, but then in my teens, I was given a meditative key to the Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records are a meditative library. It's a metaphysical place that isn't really a place. It's just sort of spiritually there. So it's a library, though, that every soul apparently has a book in. And in your book, there is a record of where and who and when your soul has been. And if it hasn't been anywhere, there's a record of that too. I don't really believe that everybody's been reincarnated, per se. I have these threads that are in my book in the Akashic Records that link each life to the next. And there are things that are constant in each and every life throughout my book. And one of those things is fire and fire safety. And so I cover fire safety here every week as well. I keep a kettle full of water on top of my fire. I have a sprayer around the corner. I've built and cooked on and run many a fire outdoors. If you have your fire outdoors, you need to make sure that you dig a fire pit that's lined with rocks and doesn't have anything growing in it. And then once you build your fire pit, you want to make sure that you build it in a place where there's no overhanging branches so that the trees can't catch fire. And then you want to make sure you have a bucket of water and a bucket of dirt or sand and a shovel in case you need to put that up. You always want to be prepared with what you need to put the fire out before you even light the fire. So we also have been discussing all these threads. So we cover fire and fire safety, but I've also been covering smudging and grounding. These are things that you should do before you meditate. Meditation and reincarnation are two more threads. So before I meditate, before I have a ritual, before I do a reading, I smudge and ground. This is a smudge stick. It's made of dried sage and it's bundled. And it cleanses your aura. Cleanses your spirit, so to speak. It's more of an outer spiritual cleansing, though. And then the grounding, you just want to cleanse your aura with it. And then the grounding, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out. Grounding is for cleansing your insides. So you want to blow out all the negative. Breathe in positive. And think an uber positive thought. And breathe out positive. That way, for your meditation, for your readings, for your rituals, you'll get the most positive results you possibly can from the universe. Hi, Bear. Why don't you go eat your lunch? I don't know if you can see Bear, but he's here trying to photobomb. So I guess I'll go ahead and tell the story of the Grateful Dead. But first, I just want to say one more thing on reincarnation. Another thread that I've had has been that I've been a psychic medium throughout every life. I didn't always know it, but I was a psychic medium, and therefore I've spent a lot of time communicating with the spirit realm in this life and others. And every spirit I've ever encountered has the same thoughts on reincarnation. And what they think is that every person who's been reincarnated has also been murdered. Like, you get murdered and then you get a chance to come back and try again, because the murder thing is a little unfair. So now I'm going to tell the story of the Grateful Dead right after I take a sip of my coffee. Bugs making funny noises on the wood. Okay, here we go. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. It was so long ago that she traveled on foot. As she was traveling along one day, she happened upon a little village. As she got closer, she noticed a crowd and a bustle. As she got closer still, she noticed that they were arguing. The whole crowd. And they were arguing over, quite literally, over a dead body. The traveler thought this was a little disrespectful, because he was laying right there, the dead person, and people were arguing right directly over him, over his debts and who was going to pay them, over his burial and who was going to pay for that. And so the traveler just thought it was really quite gross. So she stopped the villagers and she told them that she would pay for a proper burial for the man, and she would pay his debts. And so she did. She paid for proper burial, and she paid the man's debts, and she prayed over his grave. And then she traveled on. And then one day, decades later, the traveler from the beginning of the story happened upon a life or death situation in which a stranger came out of nowhere and just saved her life. Traveler, thank you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you save my life? And the stranger simply said, I am the Grateful Dead. So it's a story about reincarnation. There are some people who think that the person at the end, the stranger that saves the traveler, is a dead person, or is a corpse, or is a zombie. But corpses, zombies, dead people don't save lives, do they? No, not typically. It's not really a thing, is it? It's a reincarnated person. It's the person that she paid the debts of and paid for a proper burial for and prayed over his body, his grave. That man died, obviously. And then he'd probably been obviously murdered. And then he was reborn in a little baby body. And then decades later, he realized who the traveler was and that she needed his help. So he swooped in and saved her life because he owed her debts, his debts, and the debt of the proper burial and the prayer and everything. I really think there's something to the prayer. Like, in order for the soul to be free to move on, they need that prayer. You should pray over your loved ones' graves because their spirits really seem to need those prayers. So, my book in the Akashic Records is really big and really old and really dusty. And half of it is light and dry and sandy. And then there's like this watermark. And then the other half is dark and wet and muddy. And the lives in the light, dry, sandy part are really long, like unusually long, like 1,000 years or more. And the lives in the dark, wet, muddy part are way shorter, like way less than 100 years, less than 50, most of them. So, I think the watermark marks the Great Flood. It definitely seems to mark where time goes from BC to AD. So what I think happened was before the Great Flood, we had recorded history, but it got all wiped out except what was carved into stone, which literally seems to be the case. And then after the Great Flood, we started writing stuff down again. And when the waters receded. I happened to be on a boat, so I survived the Great Flood, so my soul has that recorded. I don't think a lot of souls have that recorded so much as I did. Like, I saw places that were supposed to be out of the water, underwater, well underwater, from boats. So those that survived on boats. And there really weren't that many survivors. Not when you look at how many millions of people live on the planet today. It's strange, but I mean, how many millions more would we have and not be able to handle had the Great Flood not happened? I mean, perhaps some other devastating thing would have happened in its place. I don't know. So, at this point in my book, we're discussing this season. We're discussing the second life in my book. And by this time, I've already got some serious threads that hold me to my first life and hold true to the second. Like I said, fire safety, smudging, grounding, reincarnation, meditation, psychic medium, stones. I've always had a rock collection. I don't think there was a life that I didn't have a rock collection. But I also had a lot to do with a lot of the circle stones all over North and South America. So, stones, stars, angels, and today we're going to talk about astral projection, which I did talk about last season, and it did come up in my first life, which is why it's a thread. So this isn't the first time I used astral projection. But this life that I'm talking about this season is that of a fallen angel, so to speak. I was an angel, and then I took only one swing in defense of God, and I fell to become a cloud bird. I didn't fall to hell like Lucifer. I became a cloud bird. So I was a little... I think I was penalized, but the angels say I wasn't. But I feel like I was, and I said it last week, schooled by God, kind of. And so, in this episode, I want to discuss my education, which I started discussing last week, which was mainly all I did as a cloud bird was study the stars, the constellations, and how they move, and the great year, and how our whole galaxy moves, and all of that. And astronomy too. It was like probably just the beginnings of astronomy, and I may have had something to do with later writing some of it down so that people could understand what was going on in the heavens and how you could see the future unfold a bit from the stars. So I learned this in this life as a cloud bird. But I also studied stars in my life prior to that of the cloud bird. So we've been discussing the life of the cloud bird this season and my soul's journey as a cloud bird. And so I spent most of my time stargazing or astronomy. And then the things I learned, my education, were mostly stargazing, and or astronomy, and I also practiced astral projection. I think as a cloud bird, I was mostly an astral projection. I barely had a body. I was mostly made of cloud. So I suppose this was the life as a cloud bird in which I mastered astral projection. Like I said, I barely had a body as a cloud bird, and then as an angel, I was also made of cloud. So even as an angel, I was basically an astral projection. So I don't know if you know what astral projection is. We covered it last season. A little bit. And I have I think it's in an episode, but I also believe I did a separate meditation for meeting your spirit guides. Spirit guides are really important. I use my spirit guides even in my meditations, but specifically in my meditations in which I'm going to astral travel, you want to take your spirit guides with you. So you want to know who they are. You want to figure that out first, and then you can astral travel. So astral travel is basically that transcendental meditation you hear people talk about, and that they charge a lot of money to teach you. I don't charge anything, but you have to go back and look for my astral projection or my meeting the spirit guides meditation, to meet your spirit guides. So transcendental meditation is basically meditation that takes you somewhere else. So it's basically astral projection. When I astral project, I can go anywhere I want. I can't go any time I want, but I have been able to sort of occupy my previous body in another time, which that's interesting. I can't really do it in the future because the future doesn't really exist yet, but I can go back in time and check things out. But I can't change anything. It all just happens as it happens. So I can just go back and experience again some things, which I've done here or there just to learn exactly what happened. So yeah, astral projection is when you leave your body behind. This is how I go to the Akashic records. It's just your soul soaring off into the universe, multiverse. So I don't go anywhere without my spirit guides. You definitely want to check out spirit guide meditation. If you haven't met your spirit guides, you should not astral travel or even really meditate without them. Granted, you have to meditate to meet them, so you have to meditate without them there. But they're there whether you know it or not. They're around, and they'll know if you're meditating to meet them. So one should always travel with one's astral travel, anyway, with one's spirit guides. And my education in this life as a cloud bird was basically astronomy and astral travel. That's what we were covering today, was the education I received in this life. So that's what I was most learned in, was astronomy, a little bit of astrology, and astral travel. So every week here at Fireside Tales, I've also been singing to you the only song I really know that regards reincarnation. I wrote a reincarnation song, but then, well, I usually sing Deja Vu. I started out singing Deja Vu by David Crosby, and then I wrote the reincarnation song, and David Crosby died. So as my homage to David, I have been singing it again. So until I feel the need to not sing it, I'm going to be singing it. So here I go. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before, and another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before, and you know it makes me wonder what's going on under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La da da, la da da, la da da. La da 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 da. We have all been here before. 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 Well, that was a surprisingly decent version. I didn't forget to scat. I didn't forget the end. Sometimes I jump ahead and then I jump ahead of that and get ahead of myself. Dead ahead of myself. Well, I guess that's it for me today. Yeah, so astronomy, astrology, and astral projection. Have a weird and wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching. A Mililli Studios production.